to sell people the idea that this constitution is great, you know, you have to distort history. Every day we look outside and see how the constitution is failing us. Every day we see how this constitution is failing us.
Yeah.
And I think the miseducation of South Africa
Yeah.
is why we have not dared to have the very frank conversation about, okay, it doesn't work for us. We've given this a chance. We see Cyril Ramaphosa defending, rightly so, the people of Palestine.
Yeah.
And in the same breath shakes hands and effectively goes to kiss the ring for technologies to more effectively kill Black people in South Africa. We have so successfully, as white people in South Africa, instilled in Black people the need to feel guilty on our behalf.
We are here finally. And you have flown in just for this. Thank you so much for that.
Not to mention, like I told you, this was a perfect excuse to see my people. You know, it was a very self-serving flight and a very much needed one. And I'm grateful. So, and very humble by the invitation. Thank you.
Yeah, long may that self-serving spirit continue. Because if I can benefit from what is self-serving, what a contradiction of terms, by the way.
No, let's just call it a mutual, you know, it's mutually beneficial. Mutually beneficial.
Yeah, thank you. That's the point.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So, please introduce yourself to our audience.
A big question. I am Ilana Le Roux. I am a lecturer currently. Perhaps let's start where I am now. I am a lecturer currently at the University of Fort Hare, in the Faculty of Law, in the Department of Public and Constitutional Law. And before that, I've been there at Fort Hare now for about a year and a few months. And before that, I was at Pretoria, where at UP, where I received my entire higher education. First being moving there in 2011, where I then got my qualification in human genetics. But they don't tell you until the last year that it's not really what you think it's going to be.
I'm sure you got ahead of them anyway. You discovered that before you got to final.
No, I guess they tell you in final year that you're unlikely to get the funding to do the research you want to do, right? And at that point, it was incredibly lab intensive, you know, work, or where most of the opportunities lie. And my interest, that had nothing to do with why I went to go study genetics. For me, it was trying to understand what makes us us, you know, precisely the nature versus nurture debate.
Yeah.
And then realizing, but that question was not really answered also, you know, in the course, you know, and the components like population genetics and the environmental genetics and where the social came into being was what really interested me. But at that point, I was 22. I did not know what to do next. I knew I didn't want to sit in a lab. And so then moved on to law because I have a BSc, and seeing how these technologies, gene editing technologies, are proliferating, I figured why not try and see if I can do a law degree then to perhaps go into patent law. So intellectual property, where you then require a BSc or a technical degree, be it engineering or so on. And when I then did the LLB during that period, also then at UP, I then realized that no, I actually am quite critical of this enterprise, of this patenting of human genome or genetic material, and what these technologies can do, and what they are not doing, right, in certain ways. But I grew quite dissatisfied, I guess, and therefore started doing more research about the ethical, nature, or asking rather, is it ethical to patent, these technologies, and then not only the technologies but the materials, the genomic material itself, or the DNA sequence. But of course, you're not actually patenting a piece of DNA, you are patenting a connection, right? Or a discovery, truly. And that's then what I argued in my master's thesis, or what I rather investigated. But then with my master's thesis, I felt I reached the capacity of what I wanted to do with that project, because it's now been a few years, from undergrad to postgrad with this same topic. And then for my doctorate, which I'm currently doing at the University of Pretoria in the Department of Jurisprudence. I am doing my doctorate now on more critical work, so relying on theory, philosophy, politics, law, that relationship, culture and ideology, looking at how technologies, not just particular technologies and particular instances, but the logics that underpin these technologies. And that is and in the interim, while I was doing all these studying, specifically from my LLB and onwards, or my postgrad, LLM and doctorate, I started working in the Faculty of Law. And then I moved on to UFH. And before all of that, before moving to Pretoria to pursue my studies, I was born and bred in Worcester, or Worcester, more commonly known for us Afrikaans that side. It was Worcester. And so I was raised there for 18 years. And the first time I ever moved was to Pretoria from Worcester. And so that is me in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Where I'm to where I am now. I guess the very truncated.
Yeah. So I knew you wouldn't share any of what I'm interested in, in this introduction. The bit that explains how on earth you became this accident of history that you are.
Not at
as a
all.
person.
Not at all.
Where in your upbringing did you lose it, or did who lose it to create this, Ilana?
Look, I am my mother's daughter. My mother.
So it's your fault. It's your mother's fault.
Yeah, I think she instilled in us a belief that we are worthy to be ourselves, and I think she has supported me in this very precarious journey, because doing academia, especially in our contemporary time or moment, and the consumerization and commodification of education and work and all these things. It's stressful, especially if your child continues to study. And I think she's always been encouraging me to do that. But that really became a thing, I think, once I've left the silo that was Worcester, and so for me, I was a normal child growing up in Worcester, a normal kid, curious, who then went to go study. And this is the 90s and early 2000s, matriculated in 2010, so World Cup, so this is not that long ago in some ways, and so much has happened since then. But I will say I was born and bred in Worcester, but I became a human being then in Pretoria.
Yeah.
And so that is where I left that space that is Worcester, that is the Western Cape, I would rather say, and its particular logic in the way it operates and its human relations, and you don't see the water while you're in it,
Yeah.
you know? And so getting out of that space was certainly the first step towards me becoming then a human being in a particular way.
That's a
Yeah.
very interesting explanation.
Yeah.
So just out of interest, then I think you're sort of dealing with it in this statement that you don't see the water while you're in it. But the friends that you grew up with, do they agree with you that you were normal growing up?
Yo, look, you're asking a very interesting question. I think the friends I grew up with, I don't have that much contact with friends I grew up with. And a lot of that has to do with what I now is my relationship with that space, you know? And it isn't the individuals.
Yeah.
You know, it isn't the individuals. It is, I guess, in a way, and it might sound strange, harboring a sense of resentments towards the fact that such a space can exist, where you are absolutely detached. And this is not to say that people were doing nefarious things. They were going about their everyday lives, but it is the structure of that everyday life, you know, that you can't see and understand it. And don't get me wrong, I was a very liberal child in the sense that we went to the other side of the school, you know, to the dual medium school where it's multicultural. We have multicultural day, you know. And so you grow up thinking you cannot be a bad person or racist, or you are not cannot be problematic because look, your proximity, right, to people who are not white then. But also how those relationships, what those relationships are, become quite apparent when you then move to Gauteng, for instance.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, this is going to sound silly, but we were laughing the other days that I grew up in a space, for instance, where KFC did not have Shiba or pub. You know, that was not an option because it's not what the demographic wanted.
No.
But that tells you something about that space,
Of course.
right? And it sounds simple and silly, but think about what our country really looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to come back to what created this in terms of this conversation we're having, or to bring it back to anchor it, it was precisely learning, and I guess that curiosity and having continued dissatisfaction with the answers I've been getting about trying to understand why is the world what it is, why are we the way we are, trying to make sense of this world, and the continued satisfaction and trying to at least follow the trajectory or the readings or what I'm exposed to and how I'm understanding it and the education I have. And so I would say only when I became more critical did the person, you know, come into being, you know, and that I think was a slow process because it was a growing process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what made it okay for you to go there, and what made the messaging land differently with you? And I'll explain what I mean by that, because my experience of South Africa is that we receive information through our complexion, basically, how it lands. For instance, we're going to talk about the Constitution just now, right? And if you look at the different sides, if you say, let's make it two to make it less complex, and you look at who's for and who's against the South African Constitution, there's a very clear color line to that. And that, I mean, that pervades other areas as well. And there's almost an animosity in my mind in the way that whiteness receives a critique of the Constitution or any other kind of, you know, dominant view in the political space, you know, that would traditionally be seen as black. So how is it that this landed differently on you and you were able to get
Yeah.
to the views that
I
you
think,
hold?
oh, sorry. No, I think it's quite telling, and I think it says, it actually speaks for itself, right? 30 years post-constitution now, correct? With this constitution, 30 years, and I think it actually links to the constitution then quite nicely. Non-racial constitution.
Mm.
We don't speak about race, we don't talk about it. And yet it's extraordinary for someone, as you indicated, with my complexion, being Afrikaans, growing up in the Western Cape. You know, it's extraordinary still that whites can have a different view than that one, or the one that either celebrates it and promotes and protects and defends this constitution, or one that is critical because it doesn't serve whites enough, right? And the fact that it is still a spectacle, I guess, or strange and quite out of the ordinary that someone with my complexion could possibly agree with something that is fundamentally against the system built on my complexion. Right? I think that speaks to just precisely how we have not gotten anywhere, how this constitution has failed us. You know, that we sit 30 years later with the same device and we have now sang the praises of non-racialism and non-sexism and all these things. And yet here we are.
Yeah.
We're having that same conversation. It's like, it's quite like that a person looking like you. And I think my response is precisely then, and I know I'm all over the show now, but it proves my point, right? It proves the point that this is performative.
Yeah.
It is not effective. You cannot, through amnesia or the failure or silence, undo a structure or a pattern or a culture or a logic or an ethic, right? We can't, through just sitting back and saying if we don't speak about it. And to actually have to reckon with what a decolonized South Africa demands and entails. You would have, if the education system at the moment was ethical and was doing its proper job, this would not be an exception.
Yeah.
You know, we would have many Ilanas, you know, asking white people questions. Yeah.
And I love how in every conversation we've had about this, you make it just, so for you, it's like, it's just a question of logic. It's like, it's not a big...
I mean, it took me very long to get to that point where it seems very obvious to me. And I have been the incredible beneficiary of incredibly generous people who did not owe me their time and care and patience. And because I was asking questions, trying to understand, and many times failed in my process of understanding and continue to learn in the process about what the structure entails. But it happened when I started reading with comprehension, you know, and realizing that before this, I really haven't read with comprehension. You have to put things into context. You have to...
That's interesting.
You know, connect the dots. And then once you do connect the dots, you can't help but think of it as obvious.
Yeah. One of the things that you've said in a previous conversation, which until you said, I hadn't thought about it, for instance, around this constitutional debate and where people stand, was using the example of de Klerk. And you were saying But if de Klerk supports the Constitution and he's such a staunch white supremacist, why wouldn't anyone believe that the Constitution is actually not for black people?
Well, it's obviously up for debate whether he's a staunch white supremacist. I mean, he was there sharing a Nobel Peace Prize, with Nelson Mandela. So I think there is, and we saw when he passed, or when with his passing, the mixed reactions we got, and the people were careful to call him a white supremacist, specifically in the mainstream media. We have to be he got this international prize that white people gave him, and Mandela. And so it's easy to forget, because at the same time, this constitution is celebrated as this miracle, right? This amazing thing, and this solution, this remedy. So to sell people the idea that this constitution is great, you have to distort history. You have to distort history. And you have to, if this constitution is great and he celebrates it, he can't be a white supremacist. He can't be a racist. But there are so many video clips. If you just go on the internet, a simple Google search of Evie de Klerk's speeches, and his foundation is proof of that. His that they said, we will fight for this constitution until the end of the day, specifically around the expropriation. And one of the things he kept saying is that they made an agreement. They must stick to it. Right? And so who made this agreement? What does it entail? And I guess if he fights and celebrates for this constitution, and we understand him to having only conceded to a democratic structure because it became economically, it was no longer viable and the pressure was too much. So it wasn't because of a moral awakening or an enlightenment or a growing a conscience. It was the most practical and the most profitable and the easiest way to do it. Right? There was this entire campaign to make sure that this goes down this way. Right? And that people then think of him not as a white supremacist, but he loves this constitution. He fought for it and keeps saying every time that or he kept at that point while he was alive saying that they must stick to the agreement they made. And I think that's important. I think that's important to highlight that it was people who made these decisions. It wasn't a mythical thing that happened just like a blanket. It wasn't just a ambiance, a culture. People became more moralized. It's a wave of, conscientization that why this ended. It wasn't abstract like that. It was individuals who sat, and it can be individuals who make again. And I think that's the thing that gets lost there.
Yeah.
But now I've gone. I think I think it's important to make that point though, that it's people that made these decisions. And I think this is, and perhaps this is something to mention as we talk about the Constitution, is the first thing I try to teach the class is that this is not a religion. It's not a dogma.
It's not.
You see, but to say that this is a paradigm. This is an option our state chose. It's one of many options. It has particular origins. It has a particular rhythm, operation, rationale, and there are other options also, right? And that people, and we've seen this through history tells us this, that people make decisions. That these aren't, as the right wings, and I see recently also the DA have been using this conspiracy theory narrative to make things that are systems, that are decisions that are made with implications. It might not be people talking directly to each other, but there are systems in place that drive and influence these decisions, right? But we can also make decisions to make different decisions, right? And I think that's important with this constitution, is to remind people that, as the clerk rightly pointed out, we sat there and we shook hands.
Yeah.
Right? I guess the question
becomes,
becomes,
shake hands on the alternative.
you see.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you need to shake hands on the alternative. I don't think, okay, so yeah, I don't think you have to shake hands on the alternative. Ethics, I think precisely the issue was that there was a shaking of hands, perhaps in the first instance, between the powers that were and those who were coming in.
What do you see as the alternative to that scenario? Like, if they hadn't shaken hands, because there is a narrative that justifies the shaking of hands. But what's your view of, firstly, that narrative? And if you had a magic wand and you wanted to create a different reality, what alternative would you have gone with on this particular?
I guess knowing that that ship has sailed in many ways makes that a very difficult question to answer, because we are now, it's wishful thinking, and even the wishful thinking is unimaginable or unthinkable, right? And that is the difficulty of the question you're asking. You see what I'm saying? Is that if we know where we are now is not where we need to be, and we can pinpoint where things went wrong and who is to blame, and what we can do to change it. And to go back and to say we wish that violence occurred, like, and the thing is, the fact remains is that it's only because there was a peaceful transition that we are where we are. The only, and this was already said in the 60s, and I mean, this is why Fanon was precisely so dangerous, is to say that in his chapter on violence, is that I guess it boils down to the hand that feeds you can also starve you. Right? And as long as there's a shaking of hands and a peaceful transition, and transition, not rupture, not taking over. And I think Prof. Ramose and Prof. Dladla already made those points of in previous conversations you've had, where the problem was that there was no state succession, that there was government succession. Or precisely the failure to have a new state. And I guess not everyone knows what the difference between the government and the state is. Right?
Just educate us.
I mean, the state is itself supposed to be the representative of the people, right? The state is supposed to be the people. But we have to relinquish some power. So for governance and basic, relations. But the government is a temporary custodian of this machine that is called the state. And the state is the people. And so if our state represents us as a people, and the state then adopts a framework that is humanizing, and a government comes in, the one of the particular day, who is supposed to be the custodian and the representative then of the state, the country proper, or the people, if they do not align with the state's or the people's vision, or they do not implement it, or they do not no longer represent what the state is supposed to represent, then you get a new government, right? But the structure remains the state of the state. Right? What we, however, had was government succession, which meant that the state remains the same. We just have a new government coming in the government is the temporary custodian, and those who deemed responsible to then effect the day-to-day, right? And to then be the voice and the implementers and enforcers of the people, right? But when we had 1994, if it was a state succession, just new government coming in, or if there was no state succession, just the new government coming in,
Yeah.
step into the shoes, and that's what we had.
Yeah, and that's a very scary thing that you are highlighting. That really, and people say this all the time, but they haven't articulated it in quite the same terms that you're doing. But, you know, the picture you're painting is that all the ANC did was step into the shoes
100%.
of white supremacy.
100%.
Which means it makes sense why we are where we are.
Where we are today, and this is actually scary, as a teacher of constitutional law, and this is precisely what my conversation with my students is that this is the framework. Let's look at it, step back. Don't put it in South Africa yet. We're looking at it. Let's look at the mechanisms, right? Let's look at other options that are, historically in human history, however we define that, or what we might include in that. Different options and ways of doing it, and moments in history where people have said this current system is not working for us. We want to adopt this system, and what the response was, right? And looking at how these make these things work. What we had in South Africa now with 30 years of constitutionalism, what we have is the inevitable outcome, and I was spoiled for choice. And it's horrifying to say that. In my constitutional law class, I put videos on, I refer to them snippets from the news. And so many constitutional matters are going on as we see. But I share with them the snippets of it and to make it tangible so that we don't just do the theory and the mechanisms in the book, but you see it unfold and then you see it manifest in material terms. You see the people in Ratanda don't have water, and that stray bullets, are killing people.
Yeah.
You also see that that's not happening to white people.
Yeah.
We see and I think every day we look outside and see how the Constitution is failing us. Every day we see how this Constitution is failing us.
Yeah.
And I think the miseducation of South Africa is why we have not dared to have the very frank conversation about, okay, it doesn't work for us. We've given this a chance. I would say that in itself was unethical.
Yeah.
But I think it's now becoming more difficult to do that.
What makes it more difficult?
The world we exist in.
Yeah.
I think the fact that people are so fragmented, socially fragmented, never have people been this lonely, this isolated, this depressed, this scared, this anxious, this tired.
Yeah.
And sure, we can have a debate about it. Yeah, no, historically, but they worked more on these, so it was more labor intensive. We can have conversations like that, but that's not the conversation I'm having right now. Like about the technicalities of trying to a Precision Olympics, as they put it. Historically, to then say, but relatively this time was more difficult and tired and all those things. That's not the conversation we're having. We are living in this moment.
Yeah.
This is where we are.
Yeah.
And where we are is a supposedly more globalized world with less borders, but where borders, as we see, have never meant more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We live in a society where everyone's timelines are different. We all live in different societies. The algorithm gives you one truth
Yeah.
and me another iteration of it.
Absolutely.
And so I think it becomes more difficult, but because of the intensification of injustice and that it's becoming more visible, people are, again, the benefit, I guess, of social media, able to see that, but people elsewhere are using certain strategies that we can employ here. I think it's very important for us, for instance, to keep an eye on what's happening in the US. And its implications for South Africa in very, 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 very real terms. And I mean South Africa, conqueror South Africa, the one we have.
Yeah. And what do you mean by that? Just explain what you mean. Why should we care?
South Africa today is still conqueror South Africa.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. We just spoke about the fact that it was merely other people stepping into the shoes in what the political climate demanded at that day, right? The continuation, except now we have different actors, right? Precisely to continue the facade, right? This is now in the political climate we are, where liberalism was, right? And I say why was very deliberately, also based on what's happening currently in the US. People pay attention closely to how these mechanisms, but the South African situation cannot be severed from the US precisely because it is a continuation of the logic and the infrastructure of it. It continues to service that rearrangement.
Yeah.
We see Cyril Ramaphosa defending, rightly so, the people of Palestine.
Yeah.
And in the same breath, shakes hands and effectively goes to kiss the ring for technologies to more effectively kill Black people in South Africa. The same people who are selling technologies to the country you just took to the ICC. Right? These things are connected.
Yeah.
They are connected. Right? And it is to forget that South Africa had a very intimate relationship and continues to have a very intimate relationship with the US, whether it's visible to us or not. We see what's happening with Trump's government currently. I mean, let's think about this quickly. We are saying we are critical of Trump's state. We take Rupert, two white golf players, Minister of Agriculture, of course. Interesting, of course, was their use of they and our, of course, GNU, but when they refer specifically to Malema and MKP, the EFF and the MKP using the their language.
Yeah.
We, this Black government, we're not like them.
Yeah.
Right? So please give us your technologies. Remember your roots to South Africa. Remember your roots to South Africa. Those roots being why he is there, now the trillionaire, of course. His roots to apartheid South Africa.
Yeah.
And how he benefited from that. None of us have forgotten or for a moment been deceived by how Elon got to where he is, right? But we go and we kiss the hand because we want more technologies to more effectively militarize and kill Black people in South Africa. Because at the end of the day, what are they protecting? They are protecting white property.
Yeah.
Right? And we have these contradictions, but we're not putting them into context, right? Yeah. So we have these different scattered events happening.
I'm listening to you I'm trying to hear you through Rob Hetzof's ears, who believes that actually we're going in the wrong direction. We should get more intimate with the US and that our relationship with Russia and China is a massive liability and a problem. We're choosing the wrong side. And you saying the things that you say.
Yeah, no, I am absolutely on the other side of I think the US is what South Africa is.
Yeah.
It is South Africa.
Mm.
I think we are the US. Currently, we are.
Mm.
We are.
Yeah.
People are. How is it possible that last year alone 1,000 babies died in our country
Mm.
or in this country,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
From malnutrition alone,
Mm.
preventable death.
Mm.
Malnutrition when we have a surplus of food, right? That is a decision. People make those decisions. The Constitution allows that decision to be made because it says within limited resources,
Yeah.
progressive realization,
Mm. Mm.
within access to sustainable or sufficient access to sufficient food and water.
Yeah. How are you able to reconcile you lecturing
Constitutional.
and with the views that you hold?
I mean, if we take seriously that it's a science we are all participating in higher education, we're participating in scientific endeavor, and we approach these subjects we teach like sciences, right? My particular training allows me to then analyze how these structures operate, right? And it is precisely from that interrogation and examination that I have grown critical of this machinery.
Yeah.
You know, this instrument, this weapon, if I'm to call it what it is.
Yeah.
You once you see, you can't unsee.
Yeah.
To then close your eyes is to make an ethical choice to close your eyes, right? That's a choice. If you understand the machinery properly and you understand its origins and you actually go and read history and you read with comprehension
Yeah.
and you ask enough questions and you do not trust everything that has been sold to you, right? Dare to question. I don't think anyone who can read with comprehension should be able to be critical of this. And I know this is now sounding very glib. It sounds very glib. And I think what I'm getting at is a bigger question is of our ability to read with comprehension.
Yeah.
And that's where I get back to the miseducation of South Africa.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're making an important point there before I asked you about your lecturing and you being able to reconcile your position with the work that you do. The language of the Constitution and how it, you know, perpetuates avoidable suffering.
Yeah.
Just say a little bit more about that and what you would have be the alternative as an example, just practically.
I mean, there are so many great thinkers who've already articulated who I draw on. And I mean, Prof. Mose is precisely the work he does on food security as well, you know. And I think in a co-authored paper around 1993 or 1-ish, I'm to speak under correction. Lasting constitutional.
We should actually, when it comes to dates, we must have him here. I don't understand how that guy's memory works. Where he reads something and then he goes to paragraph and he tells you on paragraph this, on page whatever that he read many months ago. It's like that must be abnormal. Anyway.
No, it
continue,
is abnormal. Abnormal. But perhaps that is a good question. Well, now I'm segueing again to something else here.
Yeah.
Remember, reading is not natural.
Yeah.
It's unnatural to read.
Okay, say more.
Our brains, reading is not a natural invention. We have to train. We need to learn a vocabulary and alphabet. We need to learn rules so that we can communicate effectively and clearly.
Yeah.
So that we can work together and collaborate so that society can function. That is why language is a vessel for culture.
Yeah.
Right? So as so many Black radical and Africanist and Azanian thinkers have said on so many occasions, you know, that the language when you need to teach students that we are teaching them a language.
Yeah.
We are teaching law students a language. That is at base what we are teaching them, is a language, right? They didn't know that language. Remember, there's nothing in our basic education curriculum that deals with politics or directly with politics, not this Rainbow Nation, water democracy, identity politics. I'm not trying to be glib, but I guess my first, what is now perhaps sneaking through is a frustration with precisely how people have been miseducated.
Yeah.
My own education, I think, only began truly when I had the freedom at my postgrad to then dictate my own readings and syllabus and set the trajectory of my own studies, and that was only refined and really explored when during my, my doctoral studies. And that was through reading. And it was the more I read, that light bulbs went on and you're able to make connections. And that is not natural for us to. Otherwise, as you rightly pointed out, all of us will be critical thinkers.
Yeah.
If it was natural, we would not be in our current situation, right?
True.
But there are so many studies, and I guess me doing the technology and its instrumentalization as technologies of ideologies, reading is not natural. I think, if I'm not mistaken, according to modern history, I guess, but reading spoken language or written language only something like 5,000 years within, obviously, the Western tradition, really. But it's not natural. It's a skill. That's why we go to school to do it.
Yeah.
So,
I must actually send you Mandla's speech. We attended a book launch of a friend of his in Middleburg recently. Ben Mukwena wrote a book celebrating, the contributions of Middleburg and the struggle stalwarts there to the liberation of South Africa. If we accept that it was liberation that took us. And he was one of the speakers, and he was speaking about, the origins of the written word, how it originated, why it was necessary to, even come up with that, and that the innocent way in which we normally receive the written word is not exactly how we should.
There's nothing innocent about the written word. And I think that is both terrifying and reassuring.
Yeah.
Right? Because it is it can be deconstructive and reconstructive. Right?
Yeah. True.
It's a sword, but also a remedy.
Yeah.
But putting down, it's not natural for us to read.
Yeah.
And if we understand this document to be an instrument that is read, then for logic to go out of the window and to treat it like a religion, to treat it like a rhythm and a rhyme we are to just repeat, that is brainwashing.
Yeah.
To prescribe texts and every assessment you have, whether it's the question or not, you get the same rhyme, about the Constitution being the best constitution in the world. Being that people are now free, racism is something of the past, apartheid was the evil, we no longer have apartheid, Black people are free. And then they say this in our tests while they don't have water address that day.
Yeah.
While they were evicted from where they were staying because the NSFAS didn't come through again, while they are, but is this your experience?
Yeah, of course.
To ask them, no, but to ask my students, but is this your experience? Tell me how it's great.
And what I want you to go back to is, how does the language of the Constitution, I mean, what you painting, the picture you're painting is of the reality and the contradiction of being celebrated for having a very progressive constitution, right? While our lived reality tells a different story. what I'm interested in is the point you started to make earlier around the language of the Constitution itself limits our ability to even access these human rights.
Yeah, that's very difficult to unpack, because I guess much of it relates to conversations you've already had with some of the other guests you've had, and I'm kind of now dovetailing off that and perhaps taking advantage of that fact, and therefore perhaps not saying everything that needs to be said or going into detail, because I think, again, I would rather have people go and read, about what is. But what I have seen in terms of the language of the Constitution currently in this space is the continued acceptance that even 30 years later, we can agree, or it seems in the academic space or in the legal sphere or in the classroom, that we can agree that we are not seeing the material effects, right? And these are things that were warned against far long before this Constitution was even drawn up. These were things that already experts and thinkers and ethicists and legal, scholars and human rights experts and critical thinkers have made visible long before we arrived at this moment. And yet people still continue to make decisions that landed us in this moment, right? And it was only through language that they could do that. To tell people, you are free. You are. Because look, you did not have to wake up. You look at my students in my class and not one of them have been told, none of you have been denied the right to vote. And therefore you are free. And that restrictive, superficial definition of freedom, as Ndumiso also, or Prof. Tadla has rightly pointed out as well, that's civil rights. That's not sovereignty. And what we are talking about is an instrument, a constitution that claims to be sovereign, not a people. Because even if the people wanted to change this constitution, they could not. Even if the constitution tells them they can, there's a mechanism. It says we have here on paper the ability to change this constitution. If the people speak, we will listen, it says. If 75%, if these complicated structures of voting are complied with, if you follow the script dictated to you by international organizations, the West, who tells you this is what a free society has. It has a constitution that protects the rights of minority groups. And we can decide now we can debate now about who this minority is, right? It protects minorities, but we now can debate about who these minorities is. But it never seems to protect the actual people it claims to be made by or constituted by. And I guess that contradiction is a product of language. Right? That you can speak of freedom, and in this next class we are going to then speak in the next class about how we are currently, there's no water, next door, or that. But in the same breath, we are celebrating this constitution. And I guess the question is, if I have to sit in my class of 600 students, teach at Forte, all of them Black, my class of 600 students, then if I was to ask them, what has this constitution to do for you? And they won't give me an honest answer. They would feel like they would have to think of, because also I am white. I'm a white lady in front of them, asking them now, what has this constitution do for you? And they have been, exactly, they've been indoctrinated. We can vote. Apartheid no longer exists in law. Like we have to now be very specific about how you've benefited. right? But if we talk and your ability to sit in class, but there were institutions here who birthed giants like Subukwe,
Yeah.
like Lembede.
Mm.
You know, like we sit at these institutions that birthed these giants.
Yeah.
But now we sit in class and we can't think of one way these has tangibly helped me and the people in the community I am in. And I understand them not wanting to say that because we have so successfully as white people in South Africa instilled in Black people the need to feel guilty on our behalf. Does that make sense? You know, so I guess this thing, when you put a statement, I think we, in our prior conversation leading up, you know, you put a statement like, Ndumiso, no, there's no such thing as good whites.
Yeah.
And immediately the reflex is to defend white people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without knowing what the context is.
Because there are good whites and bad whites, just like there are good
but that's
Black
not the
people.
conversation.
Exactly. That's
Yeah. So currently the language around the Constitution does not allow for that space of criticism at all. Right? It does not allow a space where you can be critical of the Constitution. In fact, the purpose of constitutional law is to fully familiarize you as the student with the script of the ethos, or and a very meticulously designed script at that, and it stops at a particular point and it ends, you know, and it's very selective. And then you tell them, here's this device, go fix everything. And now they sit 30 years later with the same device, the same issues that their parents were dealing with. How, at what point do we agree that this language, the rhyme, just going through the motions, whether it's the question I'm asking you or not, but you know you have to jot off, the Constitution is great. I think another, and to give you an example of how successful this is, and this is not, please know when I'm speaking about these terms, it's not about my institution, it is a trend.
Yes,
it's absolutely. A culture across higher education, right? To find second-year students very often where they are introduced to constitutional law, how many of them know there was a constitution before this one? Many of them think that this is the first constitution South Africa has had.
Yeah.
Right? And then somewhat confused when they found out, but we have had previous constitutions, and constitution is a synonymous democracy.
And they didn't reign supreme, the previous constitutions we've had.
Precisely, but also...
Unlike this one.
Not only that, but like it's also a synonymous with democracy. So are you saying now it becomes difficult for people to understand, right, that there were constitutions prior to this one? Does that mean there was democracy prior to this constitution? Yes, for white people there was. And they framed it in a particular way to then say that Black people they have democracy of their own. They can go and vote for who they want in the 13% we put there after we have tapped them dry of all resources, you know, they can go and vote.
Yeah, and even when they changed to the acknowledgement of that tricameral system, they amended. It was a different constitution designed specifically for that.
And for students to then understand, but okay, you could go back and you could change the constitution then, you know, they changed it in 1934, you know, so it's 1910, it's 1940, you know. There's so many iterations of this device. And now we have a new one, but the structure of all those other iterations remain intact.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Except now, this is where the miseducation comes in.
Yeah.
Because I'm a product of I only got to understand the Constitution properly. I did my entire degree. In fact, I got a distinction for my entire degree. And it was only afterwards when I had to really sit and understand the mechanisms in my postgrad studies,
Yeah.
years into it,
Yeah.
where you are challenged to decipher and make sense of this contradiction between the promise and the lived reality,
Yeah.
right?
You made reference to Ndumiso's episode part 2, which was titled "There Are No Good Whites." And what that brought up for me is a previous conversation you and I had, where you were saying, the Swart Gevaar narrative is never going to disappear in the context of white supremacy. And yet, the Swart Gevaar narrative doesn't get half as much attention as a statement like there are no good whites.
Yeah. It's because it is normal in our society. It is still there. It permeates. You don't have to say it, right? You don't have to say the Swart Gevaar. You don't have to say it anymore. Now,
It's been so effective that it lives independently of what language we use.
Precisely, and I think we have now successfully obfuscated it, and language has, and the time we exist in, we are now able to use euphemisms for it, right? Safety, population control, migration, urban settlements, informal settlement. All these things are are manifestations of the Swart Gevaar. So when people are talking euphemistically about it's getting unsafe, crime is going up, it is because on the WhatsApp groups, ladies in the community WhatsApp group are saying that there's another black man. And then 4 people in that community can trace where that black man who is walking how far to get to work and back home, right? And to pretend like that's not our lived reality. And to then stand in class and pretend like that's not our lived reality. I think for me, the biggest thing there is, right, like to see and to look at my students and to understand that they are supposedly the born frees. They fear me when they look me in the eye. And it might not be me as a person.
Yeah.
It's not me as a person. Because I do think, and I hope I go out of my way precisely to make them feel comfortable. But it's actually scary to me how often I have to tell my students, we're having an informal conversation.
Yeah.
Take a breather.
Yeah.
You're not in trouble.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm listening. And then I ask questions back. Right? And that for them is jarring. How is that our experience 30 years later in supposedly non-racial South Africa?
Yeah. Gosh. Where do you see hope in all of this, Ilana?
I see hope in precisely what or most other people would articulate, I guess, as pessimism, right? This is often the criticism against people who deliver critique, and specifically also theoreticians and people who do philosophy and intellectuals or scholars, is that the critique remains abstract. You love to break down and criticize, but you don't contribute to the solution.
Yeah.
That is a disease. That response is an effect of this structure. To think that an individual could possibly come up with a solution of a system that has been perfected over decades and centuries and across the globe and has evolved and mutated and adapted so effectively that it continues to do what it does so well hidden that you consent and you willingly participate in your own dehumanization.
Yeah.
So I find hope in precisely the criticism.
Yeah.
So I get excited when students are asking questions, not because they think I want them to be critical of the Constitution. I make it very clear to my students, I'm not here to, as they love to say, indoctrinate. I'm here to make sure you understand
Yeah.
this is a tool,
Yeah.
an instrument who operates in a particular fashion, so that when you leave here, you don't sink.
Yeah. See it for what it is.
Not only that, but like, not only for what it is, but to be discontent, to sit with that anger and that contradiction and the dissatisfaction,
Yeah.
because that can be a catalyst.
Yeah.
That has always been a catalyst. That is for every time there has been, with every liberation movement. It was sparked. Sure, underlying it is a fear of death,
Yeah.
but it is a hope for life, right?
Yeah.
And I guess the point I'm making now, in a very convoluted and long way about hope, is that my criticisms and my so-called pessimism and my my critique and my posture,
Yeah.
in general, is hopeful.
Yeah.
Despite all the things I'm pointing out, the failures and the harm, and its dehumanizing effects, and its how conniving and mischievous these systems operate.
Yeah.
I am precisely hopeful, because we see people growing discontent. The mask is coming off.
Yeah.
The mask is coming off, right? We see it now in the DA, perhaps in our popular culture, in our contemporary moment, it happening more explicitly. And I think it's beautiful that what is now coming to the fore is precisely what people who are just sitting there in the ivory towers have been identifying.
Yeah.
Who are accused of just sitting there in the ivory towers have identified, but these are the mechanisms and these are how these things operate.
Yeah.
What do you mean you didn't know lobbying is to buy, how were the negotiations leading up to 1994? How were they refined?
Yeah.
Through lobbying firms.
Yeah.
Right? Through the mining industries. These things were captured decades ago. It's public knowledge, it's history.
Yeah.
To now act shocked?
Conspiracy theorist.
Precisely. And this is what I love also about Tony Leo's interview, perhaps, was that he highlighted, and he was very explicit to do so, to create a lot of distance between him morally and Trump. Right? A lot of distance. Remember who he is now defending.
Yeah.
Trump's former bestie. And also someone who built his fortune,
Yeah.
much like the DA, on white supremacy. Right? It's this two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Tony can precisely, white supremacy allows Tony to say that he is so far from what Donald Trump is, and he rebukes the spectacle and the ethics. He disagrees with him profusely. The system allows him to say that. That's what the DA does for white South Africans.
Yeah. And it's not so much disagreeing with the essence of what he's about. It's more disagreeing with his methods, that you are too crude. You are actually disabling us. Instead of keeping these things hidden, now the way you articulate them brings visibility to all of this.
So one of the things is quite useful is obviously of being Afrikaans. You get to read precisely out of the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
you know, and being a researcher, having access to libraries and materials, and paying attention to the details.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many texts that we are there in Afrikaans hidden from the general public in these libraries that articulate in as many words
Yeah.
that the Afrikaners, we Afrikaners, we are one as the preservers and the custodians of Western culture with the English. They might not like our methods.
Yeah.
Where we disagree is based on the quality and the degree, but not on substance.
Yeah.
Right? And that needs to be understood. And I think it's important to say that as a white person who studies white people, trust a white person who studies white people then,
Yeah.
who knows white people intimately. It serves them, this current arrangement.
Yeah. How does it serve them in practical terms? To somebody who's a skeptic, who's like, Ilana's just causing controversy for nothing.
Let's look at my own experience. No, I'm glad you put it that way. You know, I think my own experience is perhaps a very relatable one, and therefore a ideal. I grew up in a lower middle class family, I would say. So mom's a nurse, and father worked at Eskom in the office doing technical things and also quality. But, you know, a very basic, I guess, you know, professions, day-to-day working class in this era. Here I'm using working class very, not, yeah.
Loosely.
Yeah. And I got a bursary to go study. Why did I get a bursary? I got a bursary, full ride paid, because my father worked at Eskom. Right? Now, every year, a certain number of bursaries were given to employees, but I live in Worcester. So how many do you think Black employees in Worcester, their children, when Worcester at that point was still as charged as it is, you know, as it was, you know, prior. Today it's a bit, well, obviously globalization, obviously also the housing crisis in Cape Town and people more systematically moving outwards because the inaffordability, you know, so it's becoming a lot more liberalized. It's DA ran, it's becoming more English now and so on. So, but I
Don't
still
lose your train of
benefited.
thought, but
No,
I love that, you know, even as you say liberalized, it's between Africans and English.
Yeah.
There's nowhere there that features me.
Exactly. I mean, this is my
Anyway.
point. But this is my point, right? You don't feature in that space.
Yeah.
And I benefited as a working class who would have been able to pursue his studies as I have had.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
If it was not for that support.
Yeah.
Right? And so, sure, that meant then, because only one person could go to a household, you know. But I knew, for instance, I'm guaranteed it that year because I'm the only person in this particular branch applying based on the people who work here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So it was almost a formality. Right? And why? But there were not other people who had that option there.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And sure, now we can say it's more diversified, it's more Black, you know, more inclusive. And so now it doesn't look the same now. But I'm still the product in a particular way of that benefit.
Yeah.
I still get to walk in the same restaurant as my Black friends, right? And be treated completely different.
Yeah.
Right? Even if I was let's say the same tax bracket as them. which I was not in many instances. Let's be clear about that. My experience, I cannot relate to the majority of the people in South Africa's experience. And to pretend like I can is false. It is a lie.
Yeah.
Right? I cannot. I cannot possibly. What I can relate to is my experience as a white person.
Yeah.
And I can tell you about that. And having my experience as a white person is precisely that having read with comprehension.
Very important.
And not accepting every answer that is convenient or accessible, but to push. Yeah, I think we are at a very interesting. Now I'm going to start a whole new conversation. No, so sorry. You now distracted me by that point you made. Now, sorry.
But I want, you see, I'm looking at your face and I'm like, I want to hear where that brain went.
My brain went there, but I realized we're having a conversation, and this is not just a, I don't want this to be a stream of Ilana's, just everyone exposed to Ilana's stream of consciousness, you know? I think, however, there's a lot to be said about what you're saying, and I think it's a very complex conversation, the one we're having. But at the end of the day, I benefit every day. I can get a loan. My friend who has a job, but is Black, cannot.
Yeah.
Right? If I, just based on where I am situated, if the quality of education I have, you know, as a white person, let me put it to you this way. White people in South Africa are comfortable enough, and this is a manifestation of my whiteness, that I applied to a singular university and was confident enough that I will get in because that is the norm of South Africa, right? Is that if you're white, you will study.
Yeah.
You will go and you will get a job. You will enter the job market. You will enhance your familial property, you know, wealth. You know, you will do that.
Yeah.
It's not an option for you to not go and do that.
Yeah, but you see why I call you an accident of history, Ilana, because just that open acknowledgement. It's not the norm. Just recently, for instance, with the most recent episode release with Charles, talking about economic sovereignty. You know, I sent a promotion before releasing that episode, and some of my friends posted it on their, you know, WhatsApp statuses. And there's this one particular one who had this rant of feedback in a community WhatsApp group, the same ones you were referring to earlier, in response to my friend posting it on her status, by the way, which it's her status. I mean, you don't have to go looking, number one. But where he was basically so upset that the clip did suggest that, you know, credit algorithms in banks are race-based and that they need to be changed. You sitting here, you saying essentially the same thing, you're just applying it in a different context, where he was also saying that even if you and I are in the same income bracket, you know, perfectly, we're the same person, just different races, basically. Even if I do get the loan in a bank, I'm going to be charged a higher interest rate than you are going to be charged. But white people deny that. Why are they so invested in denying these facts?
You just articulated it. It's an investment. You know, it is an investment because it is in their interest.
Yeah.
It is material. It is very material.
But why do you want me then to buy into this to pretend I can't see this? So fine, let's accept that you invested, it's your investment. But why do you want me to collude with you in the blindness, in treating this like it's not reality when I'm at the receiving end of this thing?
because it serves me to do that. You know, it serves me as a white person. It serves me the current structure. South Africa, as it currently exists, I would be foolish as a white person. Let's not take Ilana. Let's say as a white person, I would be foolish to go anywhere
you
else.
obviously are foolish because you've chosen what you've chosen. So clearly you are foolish, but I hear you.
One of
It's
my
the point
friends,
that I'm making.
you know, when this PhD thing gets rough every now and again, one of my friends was like, "But you had an out. You were going to go there and to practice doing patent law, and here you are making silly."
But also the choices you make day to day. I mean, you could honestly, when they say choose a struggle, I don't know your thinking process about.
I don't have a struggle.
But why would you choose to isolate yourself from your own people by having strange views about these things?
I don't, Aish, you know, Mandisa, I think we laugh, but it's actually scary that this is like when we started this conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like that it's so crazy that someone could concede. So this is the thing, right? Multiple truths coexist. This we know. I understand what makes one truth truer than the other to be the difference in ethics. Right? Multiple truths do coexist. But what makes one right and the other one wrong is ethics. Right? And perhaps it was to my benefit then perhaps that I went and I moved to the other side of the country by myself. You know, straight out of high school. But it was only years later that I became a human in that sense, right? In where I want us to be careful, right? And I think it's important to say this. I don't think we should give white people platforms for them to be exceptional, right? Like for them to be the token white that now says, you know, something controversial or contrary to what whiteness generally represents. If we have that conversation, then let's at the same time have the conversation that what is then not being said, right? The fact that it is still shocking,
Yeah.
you know, that it is still unheard of. I think, and this is something a teacher and Ndumiso, if I recall correctly, and I'm going to butcher it because he has a way of articulating things and thoughts in a way that I clearly do not. But if it feels like you are giving something up as a white person, it means you think you're entitled to something, right?
Word.
So if I feel like I'm giving up the privileges that comes with white supremacy, it means that I have to then concede that I think I'm entitled to those interests. And the math is just not mathing, then as they say, but if I understand us to be human beings and I understand us that these are the events that have happened to bring us to this position. And we can't undo those things.
Yeah.
But what we can do is where we are now moving forward.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess I understand my own role to then be is not to propose solutions. I don't think that's for me to do. If the great people of Azania calls on me to contribute to the well-being of the people of Azania, then I would gladly and humbly and proudly accept that invitation. We are not there.
No, listen, I must just be clear that I've heard enough of your beliefs to know that you don't feel entitled in any way. what I'm trying to express is really that, I mean, from where I sit, it's so much easier to choose comfort. If I were in your shoes, I don't know that I would make the choices that you're making. And it's life is just so much simpler when you belong and you.
But is it ethical? It's simpler. And I guess
Yeah.
this is a great segue to the AI thing with
Yeah.
inconvenience, right? Like it's simpler. It's simpler to
Yeah.
just succumb, to
Yeah.
adapt, to or to get on the gravy train, to just go with the flow. It's simpler.
Yeah.
But I think it's very dangerous to exceptionalize white people first, because I think that opens a lot of space then for white nefariousness,
Yeah.
and for
You
white people to.
realize that that makes you even more exceptional from where I sit, right?
No, no,
Because
no.
it's so
It's only
unusual.
because I want it to be understood very well that
Yeah.
I'm only able to recognize that because I am the beneficiary
Yeah.
of a lot of wisdom
Mm.
and generosity and insight that
Mm.
people who do not look like me.
Yeah, listen, and I'm very much alive to the point you're making here, and I agree with it. That the fact that you appear so exceptional says a lot about whiteness, right? And it's not a favorable outlook from where I sit.
It's
But
scary.
also where I'm primarily coming from, and I'm sure you can hear from my line of questioning,
Yeah.
is in trying to, you know, understand and get to the bottom of how it's possible so we can see if we can achieve the same with a broader white audience. Because it frustrates me that you, for instance, I said earlier that you see this just a question of logic, of ethics, of, you know, its rationality
Yeah.
and all of that. But I mean, the reality of my experience, my observations of white people in this regard suggests that it's not as simple as that. So give me the switch, man. I need to
You
apply
can't
this.
look. It's not for you to. I hear what you're saying, and I think it's perhaps then even more necessary for me to say this. It's not for Black people to convince white people that
Yeah.
they are worthy of the name human being. It's not for Black people to convince white people that.
Yeah.
You know, when one, I guess perhaps this is the telling part, right? Like when you say like you have to give up so much. Do we not add value in that which I have gained, right? Like to say that you isolate yourself from your community. I think my community are the people precisely I have around me, right? That is my community.
Yeah.
To say that you will commit suicide, as it is often referred to, this is suicide, is to not recognize the humanity of Black people. Because how can I commit suicide if there's a person sitting right here, or if my humanity is
But
not
Black
recognized?
people, what are you talking about, Black humanity, dude?
Yeah,
What is
precisely,
that?
precisely. And I guess what makes it even scarier, Mandisa, is that we can say it glibly, and then the fact is that we live in a time where Black people have accepted that. You know, I look at my students wherever I am, you know, and specifically now where I'm located now because the conditions are different, right? What they accept. What they accept while you teach them in the next module not to accept it. How successful is this education? If you can, in the same breath that you teach them, do not let people treat you like this. Let the very people who say this.
Yeah. Listen, your refusal to exceptionalize white people, I admire that, by the way, and it's the right posture. And it's kind of often the sense that I wish South Africa could actually apply to itself, because South Africa as well at the country level is very exceptionalized in the global context.
Oh,
and
for sure.
I don't always agree that it deserves the status
I think if there's anything positive that has come from what we've now seen with this latest wave of xenophobic attacks, with the movement, the protest action and so on, if there's one thing that came from it, it was probably that it highlighted, that I want to be careful how I articulate this because it's also dangerous what we see currently, what's happening in the media. So I'm just trying to
not look like you're endorsing what you're not endorsing.
Yeah, but besides that, I think it's very complicated, these issues, right? I think it's incredibly complicated. Precisely because one has to listen to the fact that people are dying in very real terms from material needs, right? And it's not being looked after. And the people who are immediately available to them are people who look at them. And me, I'm white. I'm sitting there. I know I'm safe. Like there's an element to, even if I don't know it, I have already taken precautionary measures based on my capacity to or my embodiment of whiteness, whether it's consensual or not. Whether I agree to embrace my whiteness or not, it is there. It has an effect, right? That effect is that
actually, so what you've just said now makes me appreciate the statement you were making about exceptionalizing white people in a different way, because whether you present as Ilana or not, you're still white and you're still going to get the benefit anyway. So it's not as if you making the choices that you're making stops you benefiting from whiteness.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the fact that there is still the idea in higher education that there's somewhat of a shock when a white person who comes from then, for instance, from Pretoria, at one of the big institutions, one of the competitors, especially within the what have you, according to the rankings in these Western, metric systems. You sit in our classes and all my colleagues, and like someone being shocked that someone from one of those institutions would come here. And then we think that our students are getting the same treatment as those students, right? But they have to compete for the same jobs, right? Except the context is different. And context is everything, right? In the sense that you cannot transplant uncritically a structure. Then you're imitating, right? For instance, let's use a basic example. I won't go into too much details. There's many components, but a sick note, having a student having to produce a sick note for missing a test. Now, while I was at UP, I can go to the on-campus medical facilities, right? But also I'm white, so I'm likely to have medical aid, so I can go there, or I have access to an urban setting or a shopping center where I can quickly go to the clicks here, or whatever the case might be, to get a medical certificate. Because I can then get out of doing an assessment or can postpone my completion of the assessment. Now, my student now, where I'm sitting now, is that access, right? Transport. Actual doctors being there. But we are requiring the same system to excuse you. It's not been adjusted to actually, or molded to actually respond to what our day-to-day needs is. We are working in a system where we are compelled to incorporate technologies, but our students don't have water and electricity or Wi-Fi, or when they do have it, our infrastructure in generally, in as a space, but as the Eastern Cape, does not necessarily allow for that too. So it's a completely different experience, and to then pretend like these students are competing in the same job market is delusional. It is delusional. And the only thing that would differentiate my student from a student who went to a Model C school, studied at one of these institutions, had access to job work and all these things, extracurricular activities, were able to develop in a very well-nurtured social environment, relations closely or bonds with networking.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
Yeah.
Right? So, but they must compete for the same job. The only thing that will set my student apart is the ability to think critically.
Yeah.
Now, the next question becomes, is the environment where we are teaching students in this fashion, where we are every day fighting to not violate the very rights we teach them they have, or doing our utmost as just people doing the day-to-day as a simple lecture, trying to not prejudice your student when the conditions are of the sorts that everything is set up to prejudice your student. We are lying to them to think that they are competing for the same jobs.
Wow.
Especially in my particular field, law. Given the technological developments and the trajectory these technologies are currently moving in, and the field itself. As I said before, law is language. You're teaching people how to, and I think this is perhaps the greatest disservice we do our students, is to not tell them upfront, you are here to study a language and its mechanisms, and language is culture. And so we are here to study a particular language and a particular culture. And sometimes we spice it up and there's shifts, but it's new trends come in and move out, and new popular niche areas develop based on what's happening or whatever the case might be, how culture and society is developing. But the basic, remains the same. But we now sitting with the fact that we are teaching students language, which requires training. As we said, reading does not come natural, right? You can lose that ability, if you don't exercise that muscle. So if we teach our students that you are here to learn a culture, you are here to learn a language and the logics and the mechanisms of how this language and the operations itself, they work, right? Like how this field, and to understand it then particularly as a field, but then having to connect it to our day-to-day and not to isolate it, right? It must be, the first thing I tell to my students is that I'm very sorry to contradict your other lectures, because law is politics. Here we will start with the politics, because law is an instrument of politics. And so you have to then, if politics is preceded by ethics, have a conversation about, okay, what ethical system are we using? Okay, is it compatible with, or claim to be using? Is it compatible with the mechanics, the actual operation, the actual design of the structure? Is it compatible? If not, who is lying? And I think we must, as a society, agree that it cannot be the people, the material. We must agree that it is precisely people within higher education who is lying to us. I guess that's the point, right? Like, because, and basic education. I mean, who structures this system of knowledge? That is dictated by state enterprise and a collective social vision, right? But this is only the vision of a small portion. I mean, we sit in a province where, or when I go back home, now I'm going back to a province where we teach as here, if you're going to do an education degree, teach them how to teach the students. And we teach the same syllabus at different institutions, except when we go into the classroom, we're not dealing with Model C school students that you were taught to teach at university. That's not the reality of your classroom. So not only are your teachers then in your classroom not equipped to teach you, right? But that precious time that they are trying to figure out what's happening, you are developing as a child. That's and you can't make up for that, especially not when you are already at a deficit in terms of resources. Right? And we must understand that this spills into higher education. This is the reality of higher education in South Africa. You're saying you're competing for the same jobs, but you're not.
You're not.
But also, but in law specifically, language, AI. I mean, ask the people who create these technologies. And people don't actually go and listen. I've realized people have a lot to say about AI, about its day-to-day use and its application, its immediate, manifestation, or where they encounter it in their day-to-day. But we've talked everywhere the discussion is about unemployment, job loss. Now, the university is a factory for the existing economic structure. It doesn't try to replace it. It doesn't try to change it. It's to keep it operate. Do what you have been doing, basically, right? So to then think something will change when you say keep the machinery going and continue it, it's quite, and it doesn't add up. But specifically law, it is a language. AI models use language, right? So that is the very currency in which lawyers trade. Now we go and we listen to these makers of these technologies, right? The people who fund and drive the trajectory of these technologies and who then control what our society looks like. They themselves say, or at least that's what they tell their investors and how they have been able to accumulate so much capital, is that the intention is to not assist, but replace costly thinking labor. Now, let's think about what the university currently does. What does it produce? Costly thinking labor. That is it should not be the function of a university. It should be to serve society. But it is now a machine that produces costly thinking labor for privatization and for profiteering, for the accumulation of wealth and profit. And why it's important that they highlight that we intend to enhance profits by replacing costly thinking labor, right? In a country where we already have the unemployment rate that we have, right? Now the conversation is, but if we teach students how to use these technologies, but that is then to imagine a world that the creators of these technologies did not imagine. The creators have already told you the aim is not for our students to incorporate these technologies, it is to make profit. And to do that, it seeks to replace what the law student then does. Of course, we will always have to have human experts, but it will be so niche, right? And inaccessible. And it will precisely be those who do what the computer cannot do, which is to think critically. Right? Like that is the reality of these technologies. If you go listen to what the people, currently the conversation within the university is to imagine what the people who are telling you what their intentions are, to is to imagine, but they mean something else, is to interpret it in a way that suits it. Now, think about this. The university produces laborers currently for the capitalist economic system that we, as is our state, has adopted. And I say that as a state has adopted because it's a decision. 1994, there was a decision made that we will continue to employ an economic structure that must produce poverty. That was the decision made, right? But then we say we will kill.
So provocative. Yeah, continue.
No, but this is the
You
truth.
know very well that there's going to be an avalanche of people that are listening to that statement. And it's like, show me where did you say that? But yeah, continue.
No, but this is, if you look, if you connect it, and it's not conspiracy, it is history, right? It is fact. To say that these things are conspiracy theories is to precisely, it is a mischievous technique to just disarm and to stop the conversation there, right? It's easy to grab for the tokolosi or the, the Bigfoot or the, the instead of addressing the issue in front of you. But that is what happened. The decision was an economic negotiation to say that we will continue with this economic trajectory, and this is the arrangement we will adopt, and to then make it palatable to the people and to ensure they are not protests, to ensure that they are docile. We will sell it to them as freedom. Right? But that is also, again, the miseducation of South Africa. We do not teach our students in school that this economic framework of neoliberalism must create poverty. It must create scarcity. It must create the threat of existential death. Right? It must make that real. That is the system, the ANC and every political party thus far in this multi-party arrangement.
How are you not fired from lecturing?
So this is let's talk perhaps a few weeks after this air.
You don't need this interview, quite frankly. You are too open, you're too transparent with your views, you state them every opportunity you get. So I doubt there's going to be any difference.
I guess this is, knowing the Constitution well enough and understanding it as an instrument, and precisely a strategic weapon. And that's what it is. It is a strategic weapon. And in this one, in this instance, this constitution has been a strategic weapon to continue to oppress and to conquer Black people in South Africa, or the indigenous conquered people. And but this constitution, however, does protect a little thing called academic freedom. And a part of my work and what I am trying to highlight in my work is precisely that it is a fiction that politics can be separated from any of these things.
Listen, it actually interacting with you and others, some of them you've mentioned, who operate in this world of academia, actually gives me a slightly different appreciation for the academic world, which I'm usually very critical of. But the fact that it can tolerate this kind of...
Look, I want to say something. I want to push back on that idea, perhaps. This is the product of a liberal university. A liberal university has to include dissenting voices voices from the fray into it to maintain a sense of legitimacy. Right? Look.
Even if they put you, like Ndumiso says, that if you've got an exotic, the taste for the exotic, then they give you that department.
School for decolonization studies or what have you, or decolonizing AI, a department. Okay, so, the fact remains is that the higher education at the moment is incredibly hostile to voices that are what I would not qualify as controversial, but controversial in our current moment. The university must lend space for the university to maintain a veneer of an apolitical institution, right? To a space where any and all ideas can find, feet and be teased out and explored. That's a lie, right? Like, so the university is precisely a political arrangement. The one we have is a liberal one, right? And that's made very clear. There's no confusion about that. But the liberal university, for it to maintain its own sense of legitimacy, must lend or give space for that department in the back.
Yeah.
Right?
I hear you.
I guess the work of the contemporary scholar or what our job is, I guess, at the moment is to make sure or visible how pervasive it is. Right? That it isn't just isolated to this field. It's not, you're not able to study the mechanisms of white supremacy just by looking at property law alone, or you need to look at the ethos that underlies it. I mean, many have pointed out the contradiction between this constitution's that claims to be built on and interpreted on the philosophy of Ubuntu. But that is not reconcilable with its relationship to property.
Yeah.
How it binds and leaves no space for flexibility. Right? The law is what it is, and if you want to change it, it must go through these pre-approved loopholes and do it in this particular way to do it, so that we can ensure that when you change it, you change it in accordance with the logic of the enterprise. Right? And I guess what we're trying to highlight here is the foundation of the enterprise. And I guess in a different way, I'm also not fired because we need people to teach students.
We can get a different variety though than Ilana.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I think I'm not fired yet.
Yeah.
Let's hope it
it's
stays.
gonna stay that way.
Yeah,
It's not we're commanding it.
Look. Look, I think for me the position isn't Mandisa. I think, like, if we're honest about it, it's like I'm not fired yet precisely because the system needs me as much as I need it in a particular way. The system currently, unfortunately, the only space where I get to do my work and to engage directly with students and to ensure, okay, you understand. I can in class see, okay, you're confused, Let's take it back. Let's link it to what we did there. Let's look at history. What were you taught? Okay, let's think about this. Did you know about this as well? And they need me. That's the only space I can do that, right? Given my particular training. But our job is precisely not to create a ivory tower, but to create a community. And I guess this is where we have different interpretations within the university. And at the moment, we must have a frank conversation then about the university at the moment does not have that. It does not, it's a machine, it's a profit-driven
instrument.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you felt the same. You've expressed the same views around the law as well, calling it a man of distributing resources.
100%.
And how it decides who lives and who dies.
100%.
How do your students react to that, by the way, before you tell us more about that, when you say these things? How is that received?
Obviously, for many reasons, and I think there are many to unpack, but obviously the first is shock, right? Especially because I'm white. I'm a woman speaking something about politics also, which is strange, right? Or having an overt position about politics in an intellectual or academic setting, right? I'm certainly not the only one, though. You know, and that's the reassuring thing. But my students, I think, struggle to follow me, but that's, and I guess your readers will be, your viewers will be able to relate. Whoever's watching this messy, stream of consciousness as we talk about everything. So I hope my students, I don't know how my students receive me, if I'm being absolutely honest. And I rely incredibly heavy on the other students who are not in my class, right? The facilitators, the tutors, and so on, to gauge what the pulse is, the class reps, right? Because it is a team effort, right? It's. I understand it that you leaving my classroom, you will not have constitutional law again. There's, for instance, or jurisprudence again. There's one opportunity you have now before you go into practice to whatever the module is. You won't have it again. That's the point of having a module. It's an introduction to it. But I know you're going to leave my class, and let's say you got just on the cusp, right? Now we're in this negotiation, but ma'am, just a few marks, and that's everywhere where that is the conversation. But I promise I will perform better in the. And I have to ask students, but you do not understand, right? But I will figure it out. But the thing is, you will not have constitutional law again. This framework that is the foundation of the legal structure, of the political structure of this territory and state. And you will graduate here knowing very well you did not understand, right? Because you can't get away with bare minimum if I give you this, and you do that, right? But me and you will know that you will feel highly uncomfortable if someone with the same amount of knowledge as you have now, who have made it through the system, who's graduated, assisted your mother tomorrow when she's in a desperate situation.
Yeah, that's making it real.
Right? Would you feel comfortable? And the immediate reflex is, of course, I would not. No, I get it, but that's short-lived. We immediately jump back to, but I need to get this degree. I need to get a job. I need to get into the job market. People rely on me. So that moment where they might recognize that I do not know, and I will not be equipped to now actually, employ or implement what I know. And obviously this is to simplify. They get a lot of training, all these things, but the fact remains is that this was where the introduction, the foundation was laid for it, right? I mean, I guess we also have to ask questions about like how many students are now graduating who have actually read a case from start to finish. And what I'm not saying, I'm not saying that it is law student for someone to be a proper lawyer, they must read cases. I think there's much more needed for someone to be a proper anything. But it is telling that people are not reading. And as we said, that it's a skill.
Yeah, and if we accept the premise of your argument that you needed to immerse yourself in these things and think about them critically, then we can't be, if we're not even giving ourselves the opportunity to get there, then there's no prospect of us really attaining the criticality, the critical mindset that you're looking for. But I've got 2 more questions before we close now. So I want you to say a little bit more about your view, this perception you have that of what the law is. You know, you're not seeing that the average person sees it as a mechanism for dispensing justice. And here you are talking about it as a means of distributing resources, and it determines who lives and who dies. How can it be that if it's meant, I mean, what is just about that?
Yeah. Hey, the question about justice is a different question. The question about justice is a different question. My understanding about what law is one thing, and my understanding of justice is another. So that's my understanding of what the law is a very particular thing. My understanding of what justice looks like is something that we've not achieved. You know, like the one is what we are sitting with, the law, and the other is what the law supposedly ought to do or achieve, right?
That elusive thing.
Exactly. So when I say, like, if we understand that politics is at base the distribution of resources. So for instance, let's use a very basic example. We have here, let's take our own electorate system, you know. So here we have people who vote for people that they agree with because they feel like these people will look after their interests. That's resource dispense, right? That's the distribution of resources. Because if these people have political power in this government structure, then they will have the ability to distribute resources in line with my ethical view, because I put them in power there. This is how the electorate system works, right? So they represent me. And it's through them that my power is then exercised when resources distribute, right? So when you have a multi-party system, as we currently do, then the battle really is a contest about how resources is to be distributed. Now, this is the same structure that makes the laws through which those resources are distributed. And so to then, and people are also resources, right, in this framework. People are resources precisely in this framework. So where you keep certain human resources and how they are treated and the conditions to what they are subjected to until you need to call on them, you know, that is also political resources. You know, those people that you can just draw on labor power as well, you know. So the distribution of resources being then at base politics, right? So politics, distribution of resources, how do we do that? Technically, practically, day-to-day implementation and regulation of policy and law.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if we talk about justice, we need to go back to before politics. We need to go to the ethics, right? So ethics tells us what ought to be. So ethics tells us what ought to be. How ought we to distribute our resources? What is the ethical system based on our current ethical values and based on our political system, which is economical, right? Based on those systems we have in place, how are resources being distributed? How ought they to be distributed?
Yeah.
Right? Now we see in South Africa, it's clearly not the case that they are being distributed in a way that we claim they ought to be distributed. But the entire foundation of the system, the economic framework itself, does not permit for that redistribution. In fact, the continued deregulation of technologies and economic transactional relationships and wealth that is so that resources are deregulated, which means it is directed towards somewhere else. Again, the distribution of resources, right? We see, for instance, what's happening now with
Starlink.
Starlink, sorry. Sorry. Starlink.
See, I can read your mind.
You see. Um, so with Starlink, for instance, they talk about like, yeah, distribution, it will give so many South Africans access, all these things. Sure, but it also does many other things, which is to concentrate wealth, to redirect wealth away from those people so they might have better internet to be better abused by the very same system.
I'm so looking forward on our episode on AI, honestly.
Me too. I think it's a very important conversation. And I think we will return to many of these things because once again, and I think none of these things are separated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very evident even in the way you're responding to the questions, very evident.
The chaos, that all of it is connected.
No, well, I suppose I can see how some people might see it as chaos. Me, I'm seeing you operationalizing the theory by giving real life examples in different contexts, in the different worlds that we inhabit.
But also to call things out with we are now so post 1994, this thing, we don't talk about, race anymore. We don't, it's bad to say certain things. It's impolite. I think this emphasis and insistence on politeness is how we got to this position. Right? To not rock the boat.
Yeah.
And I think what catches people perhaps off guard.
Escape accountability, actually.
So people say very often, say it to me nicely or I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Right? And my thing is, you will continue to say that to me, and I will have to rephrase what I'm saying so that it's so soothing to your ear that I am now singing a completely different tune. I'm not saying what I needed to say. And it's by sugarcoating, it is by obfuscating that my people have been getting away with these things. While I continue to live a completely different life.
And on that one, by the way, it's one of my gripes about interacting with white people, that it's okay for you to say whatever, and I have to self-censor just so you can be comfortable continuing to interact with me.
But see, Mandisa, I am able to say whatever. That is my whiteness, right? Like I am able, and I get to claim that under as academic freedom and my free speech, right? And as an academic and a scholar who does politics, philosophy, law, ethics, ideology, power, right? That is my discipline, is to understand power, right? And I have power. And you can't say these things, and it's controversial precisely because if you were to say it, it would be to shatter the dream.
Yeah.
Right? I'm able to say these things and then be exceptional. Right? My hope is, however, that if anything that comes from this conversation, it is that as someone who has studied the system, as someone who has been the beneficiary of being both the product and well-educated in the Western tradition itself. I see a lie when I know, I think I'm able to,
you can spot the PS.
I hope so. And I guess this is why I've been incredibly blessed to have met beyond a fault or a liability of mine to not censor myself a bit more. So, yeah.
Yeah, please don't. Yeah. And for me, just to close off this particular subject is, our race relations are unnecessary. The state of our race relations is unnecessary. And part of the reason, as I see it, for them continuing so unnecessarily long is because we don't have honest conversations with each other. We keep wanting to package things in a palatable manner for the white ear. It's never for my ear, by the way.
Yeah.
It's always for your
But
ear.
again,
But what we need actually to get past this from where I sit is to actually talk so we can understand and find each other and then build more honest, open, and meaningful relationships. And if we're not going to do that, then we're making peace with a superficial kind of engagement, which means this nonsense continues, right? These combative relations continue, and they don't have to.
I guess we come back to what we said earlier about like my criticism precisely stems from a place of hope because I believe wholeheartedly that this lie that we have been taught that there's no real the alternative, it's too powerful, the current wave we are on. I think we do have the ability and the power to do something different. And but there's a lot of noise, and sometimes some things need to just be said directly. And if one ends up being collateral damage in the in the process. Back to the firing you were mentioning earlier and whatnot. Then so be it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Then so be it.
The last point, I just want, because I know I interrupted you. I got in the way when you were describing this thing about xenophobia. You were saying the benefit, the one positive thing that's come out of the xenophobia, and then I took you off tangent just to bring it back to wrap it up.
So, no, last thing I will then say about this is that I think the only positive thing that has come from it is that it has systematically become to de-exceptionalize South Africa. We see other leaders from other countries on the continent who have explicitly said it's time now that we end this exceptionalization of South Africa, you know, and because that anti-blackness has been so well instilled in a way, I guess, that it becomes now apparent, you know, and I don't think it is, let me be careful. It's very easy for me as a white person who does not get stopped to show what was questioned because my presence is normal and welcome everywhere. It's very easy for me to say and be critical of what's happening with the current, to say, well, I'm nicely in my comfortable spot, but Black people should not treat other Black people that way. It's easy to do that. It's really easy to do that. It is a lot more difficult to contend with the fact that the reason we are in this position is precisely because white supremacy continues to feed this machine that South Africa is precisely the little Europe of Africa. And that Black people here have fought to, and this is the narrative that's now being created by these movements or these people who are sponsoring some of these movements, is that we are busy cutting each other's throats, right? And people who sponsor these movements are very much aware of the fact that white people are inaccessible. You can't say the white people must go because why South Africa can attract Beyonce and the Soccer World Cup and every other artist in capitalist entertainment or come here to make the movies and do all these things is because it has the European infrastructure and the ethos and the culture to do that easily, right? So that it's close enough, but the link, the connection, the ethos, the tradition is still the same. And if anything positive came out of this is to highlight that South Africa, there's an anti-Blackness and a white supremacy that underpins this, right? Because I'm still safe as a white person.
Yeah.
But a person who fought my ancestors for people to be free now, coming from other parts of the continent, who house people whose work I rely on now to make sense of this work,
Yeah.
right? They are still benefiting, or you see, like that they still benefit from this
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah.
We still benefit from this structure.
You are creating such a problem for me because you are forcing me to be disciplined. You're saying so much that's gonna
Oh, it makes one of
create
us.
another episode in one. But I'm gonna leave it. There's always other episodes. Let's wrap it up. So magic wand, we dish them out, right? So you have one now as a guest, and you can apply it anywhere, not in AI, because we've got a dedicated episode planned for AI. Where would you apply it to change any area of interest to you for the better?
Yo. See, the exasperation now is really just, I think that's also telling of how much there is to do. Where does one start, really? I think I think for me at the moment, my hope rather, let me frame it like that. I think magic wand is giving, I don't think you ought to give me, we just talked about giving white people too much power. I think for me, the conversation, my hope is precisely that the mask comes off. And I know that's a very vague, broad, abstract hope. I think I'm hopeful precisely because I see pockets where people are confronted with their realities in ways that are becoming much more difficult to ignore, or cannot be isolated. It speaks to a systemic issue. I guess my magic wand would be to unindoctrinate to undo the miseducation of South Africa. I think if I could do anything, it would be to undo the current, continued, and in fact worsening miseducation of South Africa.
Yeah. Definitely a dream that is worthy of a magic wand. Thank you very much, Ilana.
Thank you, madam.
That was beautiful, and I appreciate you sharing so much of yourself with us.
Thank you for. Perhaps I should not thank you, but I will probably thank you. We will find out if I have a job. No, I'm lying. I'm joking. No, thank you, Mandisa. I think thank you for the work you're doing and for creating these spaces where we can have these conversations. I think this is precisely one of the things that makes me so hopeful, is that we have opportunities to have these conversations, and I am incredibly grateful for that opportunity because I believe every bit we can do to rectify the miseducation of South Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I appreciate that you also enabling me to partake of that major, massive project.
It's much bigger than all of